Okay. All glories, Mother Atasha, all glorious religion of love, all glorious assembled devotees, all glorious to the Supreme Lord. Please, Lord God, help us live out these teachings and be an example in the world. Jai. Alright, let me start the timer. Okay. Here's where we left off. Give then that which is unlimited and eternal and frees one from suffering. Give God. Anything less is not love. And many such realizations did we receive, and abundant blessings were rained down upon us. In this way did the minutes pass into hours, the hours into days, until a man, newly arrived, who had stood listening at the outskirts of the crowd, could contain himself no longer, and came pushing through the people, shoving aside anyone in his way, shouting angrily, "While you stand and speak of religion, in the name of religion the world is at war." "The enemy," he cried aloud, proclaiming themselves to be men of God, and all the words of their mouths and the works of their hands holy, terrorize the people and make of countries a killing field. In God's name they twist the truth to their own purpose, and hate is now preached in the house of the Lord, and this they call religion. And such was his disgust that he spat upon the ground. And I in haste did answer, that they may say they are men of God, but she says, there are those who think that if they call themselves something, that will make it true. So they say, I am a man of God, a people of religion, a holy one. But it is only a name to them. It is on their tongue, but it does not touch their heart. For if it was in their hearts, they would not come among us with hate, but with love. And the man newly arrived told of atrocious acts, piling blood upon blood so that anger grew. And a woman shouted out, "We know those hypocrites. They say they are men of God. Ha! They serve not God but themselves. The idols they worship are power, money, name, and fame." "They do not want to serve God. They want to be God," shouted another. And a cry went up from the man who brought the news, "Death to the evildoers!" And I came up against him, for no, I said, and to the people asked, will we again and again, as the ancients did, return hate for hate, an eye for an eye, till all are blind and cannot see that hate begets but hate, a bitter seed producing only bitter fruit? There are those, I said, who still stand on the edges of the earth, beating loudly on the drums of war, and so cannot hear this truth. By causing suffering to others, they think to end their own, not knowing that in destroying others are they themselves destroyed. The old ways will no longer work, one said. They never did work, adds on another, and another, till all agree. There is, I said, a way, not war, but love. And the man who brought the news turned his back to us and left. But a retired soldier, a veteran of many wars, came instead and said, I too have seen the waste of war, and long ago I left the battlefield in search of peace. But in the religion of love is a holy war worth fighting for. Only tell to us, if you can, he said, what is at the root of all the evil in the world, that knowing we might pluck it out. Ignorance is the enemy you seek, I said. And many realizations did we receive. And this man comes in the name of religion. The world is at war. And we can see that even right now. I mean, boy, the land of Israel and Palestine has seen war for millennias. They're warring right now in the name of religion. One religious side to another religious side. But what is this? What is this nonsense where people are making lands a killing field in the name of God? They twist the truth to their own purpose, and hate is now preached in the house of the Lord. Yes, this is what has been happening. This we have seen, where Scripture is taken out of context and twisted with such zealous interpretations that innocent people are just hoodwinked and led to believe in all this propaganda. But it's not what God gave. No. God does not command us to go and torture others and cause suffering unnecessarily. Why? This is ignorance. They're not really holy people. I mean, right here it says clearly, just because you call yourself something doesn't make it true. Anybody can put on a robe, do the prayer, say the thing, and call yourself, a holy man, right? Or I'm a person of this religion, right? Anybody can do that. And in fact, in India, there's a whole class of professional beggars who dress up like holy men and sadhus because it helps their begging. People are more inclined to give to a holy man. Just because you look the part and you talk the part doesn't mean you really are that. It's just a name. And clear sign that someone is just a religious person in name only is that they don't come among us with love, but they're filled with hate. This is the hallmark of one who is proficient upon the path, but walks the opposite direction away from God, for they develop not love and the kindness to others which proves that love. For the Scriptures guide us to how we may rid ourselves of everything not of love, for love is our natural state of being, and all of this hate, cruelty, bigotry, racism, classism, fascism, nationalism, all of these awful isms which just add to the miserable burden of all of us. None of these things are of our natural state of being. These are the different manifestations of our contaminated consciousness, thinking we are this body and making our goal in life the accumulation of wealth and comforts and sense enjoyment for these bodies above all other things. And boy, with those desires, those attachments, and with your mind so bewildered in darkness, you'll believe anything or say anything to get what you want. All this duplicity, hypocrisy, corruption, dishonesty. We've seen these things in about every single religion, surely. It's kind of a bummer and a big letdown, to be honest. But this is the times. This is the Kali Yuga. This is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And the man newly arrived told of atrocious acts. Yeah, every horror known to man has been done in the name of God at one point or another. Yeah, it's no surprise so many people in the world are burnt out and want nothing to do with religion, because look at all the terrible things that religious people have done. Well, we'll take the word religious and just say, look at all the terrible things people have done, right? But because they were calling themselves men of God, unfortunately, they called themselves men of God, but they weren't. Because if they were, if they actually followed his instructions, they would have acted in love. They would have acted with kindness, humility, gentleness, cleanliness. They would be tolerant. They would be charitable. They would be merciful. All these wonderful godly qualities, all these true holy qualities that are actually our natural qualities for every single spirit soul. And a saintly person is just someone who's cleared away all the junk of ignorance, and only pure love, their real self, this real spiritual self, their pure consciousness, no longer contaminated. That is what is shining. That is what we see. And all these wonderful good qualities. Unfortunately, those who call themselves religion do kind of ruin it for everybody, right? Bad apple ruins the bunch. And oh my gosh, these people are like, death to the evildoers. Sure, yeah. More violence, that's the solution, right? Eye for an eye till all are blind. Hate begets hate, and a bitter seed produces only bitter fruit. Whatever you do comes back to you. As you sow, so shall you reap. So a bitter seed of violence, anger, a seed of hate, fear, anxiety, well, you'll get the fruit, the result of that, in the form of fear, anger, hate, anxiety. Whatever you put out in the world, that's what you get. One who destroys themselves. The one who builds themselves. The old ways will no longer work. They never did work. There is, I said, a way, not war, but love. It's nice. Right, but what is the practical application of that love? Yeah, it sounds nice, peace and love, man. Peace, love, no war, It sounds, nice and all, but okay, how do you practice love? How do you actually end wars via love? Well, there's this soldier, he was in search of peace after fighting in war, and he finds out this is the real holy war. This is what really I should be working towards, putting my time and energy for. This is the real holy war. So, who is my enemy? Where can I seek him out so that I can rid him from this world, so that we don't have all these terrible problems? What's the root of all evil? And Rajak answers, ignorance. Ignorance is the root of all evil. Another word for ignorance is forgetfulness. Forgetfulness of God and of our true spiritual nature. That is what causes all this pain and suffering. That's what keeps us in this world. Our forgetfulness of our eternal spiritual nature as the Lord's servants, as the beloved lovers of God. So ignorance. Some people think that money is the root of all evil. Well, money is just a tool. And you can use a tool wisely or can use a tool foolishly. Not money is good or bad, but the use made of it. But the love of money, or the desire for money, that does lead people to act in very impious ways, contrary to the injunctions of the revealed scriptures, and very immoral. Oh, sorry, we left off at. So, ignorance. Imagine there's a disagreement between two neighbors that has escalated out of control, and now they're at war. And it's turned into a blood feud, generational blood feud even. Well, all of that ignorance, all of that fighting, can all be ended if, with the light of knowledge, we all realize that none of us are these bodies. We're not these bodies. We're spirit souls. The purpose of life is not making these bodies as comfortable as possible and just YOLO. No. The purpose of life is spiritual realization. And with this knowledge, you understand that, in truth, every single person has a common goal. We're all in the same boat in this material world, struggling for existence and suffering since time immemorial. Birth, death, old age, and disease. Miseries caused by others, nature, and our own minds and bodies. Again and again. We're all in the same boat because we're all desiring happiness. We all desire to be loved, but we don't know where or how to find lasting and eternal happiness, because we're looking for it in all the places outside ourselves, not inside. Ignorance keeps us in the false ego, the false identification with the body as self. And we see those who are born in the same families as us, as our family members, and those who are in our same land are kinsmen. And we see those born in other lands, not my kinsman, or my enemy. And now you think generational fighting now. People have been fighting scores of years. And it's just tit for tat, blood for blood, eye for an eye. Kind of like in Israel and Palestine. But even though they all claim to be men and women of God, they think they're fighting a holy war. But they're just fighting each other because they're seeing each other as different. They're seeing each other as different because they have different bodies. You're in a Palestinian body, you're in an Israeli body. And thus they fight each other because of their bodies. Whereas if you took a bunch of little Israeli and Palestine children together, they would all just play. Innocent little, toddlers. They would all play with one another. They wouldn't be fighting. See, all that fighting is conditioned upon us. All that hate, all that anger, that is taught to us from an early age by those around us, by society, by our family. We're always taught to fulfill the desires of others and to listen to those around us, and so we grow up indoctrinated, hating people solely for the reason that their bodies are different. They're born on the wrong side of the border. This is just nonsense. When really, every single one of us should be working together, because both the Palestinians and the Israelis worship the same one God. And it doesn't really please the Lord to see his children fighting one another, especially needlessly. Even worse, in his name. Come on. Now that is just offensive. How dare y'all doing all that in God's name? It's just ignorance. Politics, land, power, wealth, prestige, honor, all these mundane concepts, all born out of ignorance, thinking we are the body, and not paying heed to the Lord's instructions in the scriptures. Instead, paying greater heed to our overwhelming material desires. So instead of seeking peace, love, brotherhood, they all seek worldly means and ends. And this is all out of ignorance. But lift the ignorance. change the consciousness of man that differences do not make you enemies. Ignorance is what's making you enemies. Your differences are not divisions, they're just differences. So what? So what? Someone with this body's born over here, looks like that, or grows up speaking that language or whatnot. Who cares? It's just the body. It's just on the surface. The superficial differences. So what? Lift that ignorance, and you don't see others as my enemy or my kinsman. You see every single person as a child of God, servant of the Lord, just covered over, trying to get out of this miserable condition, just like me. We're all in the same boat, trying to get back home to the Lord and free ourselves from suffering and regain again life eternal and abundant, and experience ecstatic, transcendental bliss in the loving service of the Lord for all eternity in the spiritual world, kingdom of God. Ja, yay. That's the goal, right? Well, sounds all nice, but I don't think we're going to get to the spiritual world by leaving a trail of bodies. Okay? That just sounds terribly macabre and not anything to do with God. And yes, there is violence in the scriptures. There is death and bloodshed in the scriptures, of course. But that was all necessary. Time and place. What's happening right now in the Middle East, in many places where they say this is a holy war, they say this is God's will. Well, prove it. Because he ain't saying right now to you, hey, fight each other for a bunch of nonsense. No, he's not. And all of the times that the Lord and his devotees are engaged in any type of battle or fighting in the scriptures, it's usually and almost always in self-defense, where there's no other choice. Violence is absolutely necessary because some people, as it says, where does it say, some are too deaf and beating here. There are those who still stand on the edges of the earth beating loudly on the drums of war and so cannot hear this truth. So in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a wonderful scripture, the setting of the Bhagavad Gita is right in the middle of a huge battlefield that's just about to commence. Huge. The sizes of these armies is enormous. It's in the most epic battles that ever took place in history. But leading up to that, the Lord and his devotees did everything they could to avoid a war. They tried diplomacy, they tried humility, they did everything they possibly could to avoid bloodshed. They even sent Lord Krishna as emissary to negotiate for peace, but still the other side, the Kurus, would not listen. Their consciousness was too covered over in ignorance, and they could not hear this truth. So unfortunately, war was inevitable, although everything was done to avoid it. And that's the devotees. That's what they do. They don't want to unnecessarily cause harm to others. Devotees are non-violent. The scriptures teach us to be non-violent, not to cause harm to others. Turn the other cheek, right? Well, sometimes violence cannot be avoided, and that's just the reality of this world, this material world, full of spirit souls covered over in illusion and ignorance, who can't hear the truth of God because their hearts are so hardened, so covered over. Nothing gets through. And one in the mode of darkness, the mode of ignorance, sees true religion to be irreligion and irreligion to be true religion. They cannot see things for what they really are. They are bewildered. So sometimes the devotees have to defend themselves. And verily that's what happened. Same in the Quran. There are many battles, but in self-defense. Of course, in the Old Testament, there were battles that weren't exactly in self-defense. They were on the offense, with the Hebrews taking over their chosen land. But that's another story. That was God's will. Won't get into that. But love. Love is the way that's going to bring us all to the common objective, which is love. See, people commit many sinful acts, for they say the end justifies the means. Well, for example, we have to do some things right now that are pretty bad, but it's necessary for the benefit of the future, right? So I have to do some bad things now, kill some people now, and do something, and then it'll be all right. But no. The ends never justify the means, and the means is the ends you will get, because remember, as you sow, so shall you reap. A bitter seed produces bitter fruit. So if the end is love of God, then the means, too, is love of God. And how we come to love of God, well, that has guided us in the Scriptures to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. The loving devotional service of the Lord. Hearing, chanting, remembering, these spiritual practices which purify the heart and rectify man's consciousness before God, makes him straight before the Lord, walking the path made straight. This is what brings us back to love. What purifies that ignorance from our consciousness, so that we won't look upon others as different than us and worse than us, or as my enemies or my friends or my everything related to the body. But by the grace of God, we may see as God sees, as Mother Tasha saw, as all pure devotees see, that we are all children of the same one God. And out of compassion, wish to help one another, because in love, not only do we have love for ourselves, we want to free ourselves from suffering naturally, we want to help others who are also in distress, who are also suffering. Anyone with any measure of kindness in their heart, if they see someone in an emergency suffering right next to them, calling for help, most people, I hope, will heed that call and help that person in need, whether it's someone who fell down, or they got an accident, trapped in the car, or dog fell in the well, I don't know. Anything. There's many feel-good stuff on the internet, right? People come to rescue. Most of it's staged and fake now, right? Oof, my gosh, this world. Social media. But when we understand that every single living entity in existence in this material world is suffering, separated from God in illusion, and you realize the urgency for spiritual realization, spreading this message of love of God, to free ourselves from suffering, to free all of us from suffering. If everyone took to the path of love of God, this world will be a heaven on earth. All you need to do is change the consciousness. Just remove the ignorance. Then there'd be no more enemies. There'd be no more people to fight any wars. If we all awaken to the truth that we are spirit souls, we're all brothers and sisters, all children of the same one God, then this this world will be a paradise if God's will is done. For when Jesus said, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, the difference between heaven and earth is that in heaven God's will is done, and here man's will is done. So if we all did God's will, boy, there'd be heaven on earth. There'd be no more fighting. Be all love and peace. Change the consciousness. That's all you have to do. But easier said than done, and that starts one person at a time. First you got to do it for yourself. All right, let me stop there. Let me start the recording. Okay. So does anyone have any questions related to the class?
It's funny, you answered the question while I was having it in my mind. The answer was like, when do you know when to see the difference of the war in the scriptures and then the war that happens in real life? You did answer it in class. I was going to say that was the one question I had.
Yeah, they usually had a prophet with them. Yeah. I mean, these were, biblical times, right? It wasn't just the petty things that people are up to today, which is really what it is, because we're talking, like, for example, all right, I'll get into it now. The thing with the Hebrews, when they were to inherit their promised land of milk and honey, after their exodus from Egypt, wandering in the desert, they wandered for 40 years because they screwed up big, and as soon as they were freed and broke God's commandments, oh my gosh, they keep breaking the commandments and they keep getting taught a lesson. Anyways, a lot of history repeating itself in the Old Testament. Still today. But the people that the Hebrews fought when they entered the promised land were, the Hittites, the Canaanites, the Moabites, the Philistines, the Dadeans, lots of Steens and Abites, Bites and Steens, lots of them. And I guess they were very sinful societies that were not pious or followed any scriptural injunctions, and the Lord just said, hey, just clear house and take over, so it wasn't my call, it was God's call. But don't worry, we're all eternal. Remember, we're not these bodies, so even the bodies go. Still, the spirit soul remains, and you just get born and get another body. So, but that doesn't mean, it's okay to kill somebody because you're eternal. So go ahead and I can off you or off this village over here and it's fine because no one really dies actually. Just the body, right? No, don't do that. Yes, philosophically correct, but incredibly immoral and against scriptural injunctions, which does not please God. It has an opposite effect. Stuff in the scriptures, there's always context. And context is huge. Oh, huge. Huge. Because context is usually what's thrown away when people misinterpret the scriptures. They take things out of context. For example, jihad. Jihad means a holy war. And that is a battle cry of terrorists even, right? Suicide bombers committing jihad, blow themselves up, go to paradise, 99 virgins or something like that. Nonsense. Well, jihad, taken so much out of context. There's a story Mother Tasha told me from the Quran. It was at the end of the final battle when the faithful were finally safe, who were under the leadership and protection of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And when those close to him said, finally, this jihad, this holy war is over. And the Prophet Muhammad looks to them and says, no, now the real jihad begins. The war of the good within you versus the evil within you. Boom. Now there's your context for jihad. The holy war is not fought without. Jihad, holy war, is fought within. And your enemy is no one outside your body. Your enemy are the evils contaminated in your own mind and heart, the demons deep within. But those who claim to be men of God, who know not how to cast out these demons from their heart, surely look to others to blame, punish, and persecute, thinking these outside forces and people to be who I'm fighting. But they never look in the mirror. That's who we're really fighting in spiritual life. It's an internal process. That's why it really doesn't matter what your body looks like, how you dress, where you were born, what language you speak, what community, what religion you belong to. None of that matters, because really all of us belong to God. Anywho, I think I had more I was gonna say, but I lost it. Any more questions y'all might have, or comments related to the stuff? Nope. Wonder if I can remember what I was trying to say. Could read a little more. Oh, someone saying something? Are you saying something, Meat? I can't hear anything. What's that? Oh, Meat, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Technical difficulties. Can you hear me? I can't hear any of you guys. I wonder if that's my end. Well, maybe heavy class, short class. Keep it short and sweet, right? No problem with that. Gosh, what was I gonna say? And that buggy. And I'm sure as soon as we end this recording, it's gonna come to me. I'm like, like, oh my. Well, anyways, I guess we can stop there then. Thank you all for joining. So, all glories to Mother Atasha, all glories to Religion of Love, all glories to assembled devotees. Jai. Okay, we're back. Turns out Meat was talking, I couldn't hear anything. Here we go. Coming back for round 2. So, Meat, would you be so kind to share again what you were asking or talking about?
Yeah, I was wondering, people who cause conflict due to, let's say, they're unable to feel empathy, or they're having psychopathic tendencies, and so they're maybe murdering people or hurting other people. What is their position in spiritual life, and like, what do scriptures and how should we deal with people like that?
That's a good question. So what do we do about crazy people who basically say, who are just so out of their minds, nut jobs, who can't hear anything and are just causing great suffering to others willy-nilly? Yeah, what to do about the psychopaths? Well, my goodness, we got plenty of them. Remember, one whose consciousness is really covered over in ignorance. Like I said, they see religion to be irreligion and irreligion to be religion. So that is how people can blow themselves up and blow a whole, innocent crowded street corner or whatever, building, or just with innocent people in it, and do that with conviction, is because in their minds they really think they're doing the right thing. They really think that that is religion, that that is serving God. But that is the grossest type of bewilderment and illusion. They really can't see things for what they are. They are insane. In a court of law, one is considered clinically insane if it can be proven that the person can no longer tell the difference between right and wrong. And because they don't know what they're doing, they are not held accountable for their actions, at least, criminally speaking. They still go to some other type of prison, but it's not as bad. But anyways, that is the definition of insanity according to man. It's pretty good, not knowing right from wrong. And someone who's further away from truth surely cannot tell the difference between right and wrong. So how do we deal with them? Ooh, how good question. I mean, deal with them is a loaded word that can go so many different directions. But what is their role in spiritual life? Well, we all, remember, are in the same boat, and that the purpose of life for everyone is spiritual realization, even for the crazy, murderous psychopaths. They too are pure spirit souls, just covered over, but their covering is much thicker. Their karmic reactions, the web that they're in, is much worse, and their suffering is far greater. We don't realize that, yes, they're causing suffering to other people, but they themselves are suffering the worst. And all that stuff comes back to you. I mean, according to the Manu Samhita, which is an old scripture from ancient India, it gives a bunch of scriptural instructions on what to do in society. What is the punishment for a criminal who commits this act, or the punishment for a person who does this thing. And according to the Manu Samhita, one who commits murder, the appropriate merciful punishment is to be hanged, capital punishment, execution. And you might think, well, for some, that's not a good thing, right? Killing people. I thought you just said eye for an eye makes whole or blind, so why are you killing someone who killed another? Doesn't that defeat the purpose? Well, actually, if you know the way karma works, as you sow and so shall you reap, killing a murderer is actually a mercy. It's not it's a punishment, but it's a mercy unto the murderer, actually. Because by killing that person, the murderer, in that lifetime, for the crime they committed in that lifetime, that will equalize that, or neutralize that karmic reaction. They will immediately atone for that sin of murder. Whereas if they got away with it, or weren't punished in the same way, through death, as they had dealt out, then that soul is going to suffer far, far worse in its next lives. Not one, multiple lives. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. So, killing a murderer to the state is actually doing him a solid. Because it would be way worse if you just let that slide, or let that go. Because the next lives, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much bad for that person. Way worse than just being hanged. Kind of interesting, huh? Perspective, right? Context. So what do you do when you're dealing with these psychopaths and crazy people? Well, if they're right in front of you, I would hope you'd try and get out of there and get to safety, obviously. Devotees, they do always try to de-escalate and avoid confrontation as much as possible. They would rather leave a situation as soon as possible than try and, let things get out of hand. And avoid, violence if at all possible. We're not looking for a fight. That's not what love is all about. It's not looking for a fight. But if the fight comes to you and you can't escape it, well, God help you. Just surrender unto the Lord. I'm sure He will. Inshallah, hopefully. But institutionally, what do we do with crazy people like this? Well, man has tried so many different things, right? But I don't know. Aren't some of these crazy people the ones making the laws? Who are in power? Who are running the show in society? Oh my goodness. There's some pretty crazy people in positions of leadership and power who should be far away from a microphone or anywhere to say these awful, dark, twisted things to infect the innocent people with their ideas. Because every action a great man does, or who's seen as great, common men will follow. Not everybody. Yeah. The example by our leaders is what the people follow. And we got terrible examples, don't we? Boy, howdy. We have very few good role models. Gosh, where are those Mother Teresas, those Nelson Mandelas, those Gandhis, Martin Luther Kings, those Rumis? Where are those wonderful souls doing good, living in love, being the example, being the change they wish to see in the world, living it? That's what we need more of. And that's actually the only way things will change. See, a spiritual revolution doesn't happen, with bombs and guns and fanfare. No. A spiritual revolution that unites in understanding all the great religions of the world begins with us, with you and with me. You first have to live the message and then give it. Help yourself from drowning, or as when you're in an airplane, when there's an emergency and the oxygen mask drops, doesn't it say, first put it on yourself before you help another? Well, healer, heal thyself before you heal another. We have to work on ourselves first. And someone might think, well, that sounds a little selfish. Just work on yourself. All these people around you are suffering. That seems like pretty narrow-minded, right? You're just going to focus on yourself, Well, they don't understand that. It's not selfish, it's soulfish. And it's actually the greatest thing anyone can do. at all. It's the greatest thing. Because if you do work on yourself, purify your consciousness, clear away all the badness, all the evil, all the ignorance, all the contamination from the heart, remove all of that, well then, pure love and light's just going to flow and shine through, right? By ourselves, we can't really do anything. The one man said to Mother Atasha, he said, I'm just one man. What can I do? So much big problems in the world, all this hunger and corruption and war and famine. I'm just one man. What can I do? And she said, you're right. By yourself, you can't do anything. But clean your heart, and God will work through you. If the pipe is dirty, can the water that comes forth be clear? No. Clean the pipe, clean your heart, clean your consciousness, then you can really serve the Lord, and He can work through you. And that's how He does. And we see these wonderful great saints, prophets, messengers, spiritual masters, holy persons, these wonderful devotees. God is working through them, doing all this wonderful work in the world. They're not alone. You think Moses by himself was able to part that Red Sea so that people could escape? No. You think Jesus is by himself can just raise Lazarus from the dead? No. God is working through His devotees. God is serving through the senses and the body of His servants. It's wonderful. So by working towards spiritual realization, purifying your heart to come again to love of God, you do the greatest service to the entire world, to all people, to all the plants and animals, to everybody. For by becoming a pure devotee, a pure servant of the servants of God, you render service to all. And we need these wonderful beacons of light, these shining examples that inspire others to also take up the practices and the process of spiritual realization. They're inspired by the love of great devotees. So become again a devotee of God. Be yourselves glorious, for by being glorious, you glorify God. And He'll do wonderful works through you. But only if you're purified. And that's the work we gotta do. We gotta clean our consciousness and our hearts. Clean, 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 grind, grind, grind. It's a lot of work. That doesn't mean, of course, when I mention work on yourself, that you can't also help others. Obviously, if you know our history, Mother Tasha's history, we definitely help. We definitely help a lot. We do a lot of charity work. Medical eye camps, schools for the poor kids, and self-sufficiency programs for women, and nutrition programs, hygiene programs. We do lots of stuff. We try to help as much as we can. We try to do as much help, but we know that caring for the body is only temporary. The soul is eternal. And good deeds without God is like polishing the cage and letting the bird inside die. So we know, of course, the greatest charity is freeing ourselves and others from material bondage, from the illusion of ignorance. This is the greatest charity one can possibly do. And you do it first by giving it to yourself. And then you can help others materially, of course. Nothing wrong with that. As I say, you can't preach to hungry bellies. If someone's suffering, someone's in dire straits, they're starving, they're diseased, they're in fear for their life, They don't want to hear your sermon or your, sign up for your worship or da-da-da-da. They don't care. There's more pressing matters, and rightly so, because we all have the obligation to keep body and soul together. We have to make sure we don't die prematurely because we have important work to do. We have to purify our existence. We have to come back again to God and ceaselessly engage in His service. We have to get back. This is the only way to truly be happy, to be free from suffering, to truly be good. So, crazy people. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. And they can't really hear. That's the thing. Nothing you say is going to get through, unfortunately. It's just throwing gasoline on the fire, really. Couldn't tell you what to do in any given situation, to be honest. There's no playbook to life. You just do the best you can by adhering to the, your regulated principles, to the scriptural injunctions. Act as a saint. What would Jesus do? Like those bumper stickers. If only people actually took that really to heart. Would really consider, what would Jesus do in this situation? What would Mother Atasha do if she were here? What would Prophet Muhammad or Moses or take your pick from all the wonderful saints? What would they do in this situation? If people actually thought about that, what would a Saint Francis of Assisi, so gentle, so meek, so innocent, or even Jesus himself, who was so compassionate and merciful to all, went to all the sinners and all those who were considered the least among mankind. He went to everybody and tried to help them, both in body and in spirit, healing their bodies and guiding their souls with the light of knowledge. I'm sure if people acted like Jesus, this would be a wonderful place. People acted like any great saintly devotee. How did Jesus act? He was kind. He was loving. He had unflinching dedication to the Lord and serving Him, as do all the great pure devotees. So, what do we do in every situation? Dealing with people, dealing with life, dealing with whatever? Well, one who acts as a saint before he's a saint becomes a saint. But important to have a spiritual master to guide you. Otherwise, you might misinterpret the scriptures, and even people thinking they're acting like a saint could take things out of proportions if they're misguided. So, important to understand the scriptures clearly. And that is what the benefit is of having a spiritual master who can help you understand things clearly as they are, so that we don't go off on the tangents in our own minds thinking that this is what it means and that what it means, but really we're just twisting it to the things that we enjoy and the things we like. I'm trying to make it more convenient and fit us. Picking and choosing from the scriptures the things we want, not what we need to hear, not what we ought to be doing or be avoiding. That's what's important, to have a spiritual master who lives the message of God. And by their shining example, they inspire others. And if you become spiritually realized, become a lover of God, See, lover of God is like a lamp that is lit. It's not meant to just shine for itself. Ooh, what a nice lamp. No, the lamp shines on all around. That light, that love, that is felt by all around it, and it has an impact. Look at the impact of one Mother Teresa, or, for example, just in recent times, or one Gandhi. People who live more with their heart, live more with love. Wow, the impact. Wow, huge impact. See, Work on yourself, purify your existence. Oh, you have the biggest impact ever. And good luck with the crazies. You know, there will be times when you'll be tested. Part of life. Any last questions? Or I think we're probably at the close there now. Yeah. Okay. So just close there. And then anyone want to say this one last thing? Or y'all good? All right. Okay. For the second time, that's why not. All glories to Mother Atasha, all glorious religion of love, all glories to the assembled devotees. Jai. All right, closing for real this time.